Kelly McGonigal's The Willpower Instinct is built around the premise that willpower isn't just a moral trait or a matter of discipline, it's a biological capacity shaped by how we think, feel, and manage our bodies. McGonigal, a health psychologist at Stanford, originally developed the material for a class she taught on the science of self-control. The book blends neuroscience, psychology, and everyday storytelling to explain why we often fail to do what we say we want and how we can train ourselves to do better. She begins by reframing willpower as three distinct powers: I will, the capacity to do what you need to even when it's uncomfortable; I won't, the ability to resist temptations and impulses; and I want, the deeper awareness of your long-term goals and values. This tripartite view sets the tone for the book. Willpower isn't just about resisting donuts, it's about aligning moment-to-moment actions with the bigger picture of who you want to be. McGonigal draws on research showing that these three capacities are rooted in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning, focus, and self-control. A core idea she introduces early is that willpower is like a muscle. It can get fatigued in the short term but can be strengthened over time through practice. However, this muscle metaphor comes with a caveat: if you overexert it, you may end up with less control later in the day. She tells the story of experiments where people asked to resist cookies were later more likely to give up on frustrating tasks. The implication is that self-control is a finite resource within a given window, but like a muscle, it grows with training. McGonigal weaves in the role of stress as a willpower killer. When stressed, the brain shifts into a threat response mode dominated by the amygdala, prioritizing immediate survival over long-term planning. She recounts examples of people who revert to comfort eating or impulsive spending during periods of strain, not because they're weak, but because their nervous system is in fight or flight. She suggests that relaxation techniques, even as simple as deep breathing or short mindfulness breaks, can return the brain to a state where the prefrontal cortex can steer behavior again. One of the most engaging threads in the book is her discussion of mindfulness as a willpower booster. She describes how focusing attention on the present moment strengthens the brain circuits involved in self-control. Through anecdotes of students who learn to pause before acting, she shows how this awareness gives you a space to remember your goals before acting on an impulse. The takeaway is that self-regulation isn't only about forcing yourself to resist, it's about building the habit of noticing what's happening inside you before you react. The book dives into the surprising ways our brains trick us into undermining our own goals. One example is moral licensing, the idea that doing something good gives us permission to do something not so good. She tells the story of dieters who, after eating a salad, felt entitled to have cake because they had earned it. This pattern isn't about logic but about the brain seeking ways to reconcile short-term pleasure with long-term goals. Recognizing this mental loophole allows you to plan for it and avoid self-sabotage. McGonigal also explores the "what the hell" effect, a phenomenon where a small slip makes people feel they've blown it entirely, so they might as well abandon their efforts. In one study, people who believed they'd already eaten too many calories for the day were more likely to keep overeating than those who forgave themselves for the slip. She illustrates how self-compassion, rather than harsh self-criticism, actually helps restore willpower and get back on track after mistakes. The physiological side of willpower gets a thorough treatment too. McGonigal explains the link between blood sugar stability and self-control, noting that the brain's ability to regulate behavior depends on a steady supply of energy. She gives the example of how decision fatigue can set in when we're hungry or tired, leading to poorer choices. The advice is deceptively simple. Take care of your body if you want to take care of your goals. Sleep emerges as another powerful factor in her storytelling. She shares research showing that even modest sleep deprivation impairs the prefrontal cortex, making it harder to resist temptation or focus on long-term plans. People in her classes often discovered that the biggest boost to their self-control wasn't from forcing themselves to try harder, but from getting more consistent rest. The book isn't all about resisting temptations. It's also about amplifying motivation. McGonigal emphasizes connecting your daily actions to your bigger why. She shares stories of people who framed their healthy eating, not as weight loss, but as staying alive longer for their children. That deeper emotional connection to a value made sticking to behavior changes feel less like willpower and more like commitment. She warns, however, that focusing only on the future can backfire. Our brains discount future rewards in favor of immediate gratification, a tendency called temporal discounting. Through engaging experiments, she shows that making the future feel more vivid and emotionally real can make it easier to choose delayed gratification over instant pleasure. One trick she shares is visualizing yourself 6 months or a year from now enjoying the benefits of your current good choices. Social influences play a bigger role in willpower than most people think. McGonigal uses the example of how behaviors, good or bad, spread through social networks. Being around disciplined people tends to raise your own self-control, while being surrounded by impulsive behavior can erode it. She advises being intentional about who you spend time with if you want your habits to change. One particularly memorable section involves the idea that our future selves are like strangers. People who feel disconnected from their future selves are more likely to procrastinate or indulge in short-term pleasures. She tells the story of experiments where people were shown aged images of themselves, and those people became more likely to save money or make healthier choices. The point is that strengthening your relationship with your future self is a form of willpower training. McGonigal also challenges the idea that we should avoid temptation entirely. She argues that occasional exposure can help build resilience, much like lifting heavier weights strengthens muscles. She recounts stories of students who intentionally practiced small acts of resistance, such as keeping a tempting food nearby without eating it, to build their willpower capacity. This stress inoculation of self-control made them stronger when real challenges appeared. In the end, the willpower instinct offers both a scientific framework and a human story of why we succeed or fail at self-control. It blends lab experiments, personal anecdotes, and practical exercises into a toolkit for daily life. McGonigal leaves readers with the reassurance that willpower is not an inborn trait you either have or don't, it's a skill you can develop, one choice at a time, by understanding your mind and body and using that understanding to steer toward what matters most.